1998 was a great year for gaming on the Nintendo 64. Now I know some of my favorite titles, and probably some of yours too, appeared on the platform. Star Wars Rogue Squadron, Turok 2, Banjo-Kazooie, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, and many others. Now with that said, Christmas of that year was particularly good for me. While I got my hands on most of the biggest titles of the year, Pokemon, Zelda, and Star Wars Rogue Squadron, there was one game that I really needed to fuel my wrestling-loving heart, and I got that too. Of course, you've probably already seen it in the title, but I'm talking about WCW versus nWo Revenge. What's up, everybody? Danny from the Famicast here. If you're new to the channel, please be sure to subscribe and turn on those notifications. Today, we're taking a look at the classic WCW versus nWo Revenge on the Nintendo 64, with a look at the gameplay, performance, the game's legacy, and more. WCW vs. nWo Revenge released on the Nintendo 64 in October 1998 in North America, and then in November of the same year in PAL territories. Now it's interesting here because it actually never saw a release in Japan. Now everything about this game was bigger than World Tour. The game boasted over 60 playable characters, more arenas to play in, better visuals, improved gameplay mechanics, and more. Like many of you, I'm sure, I was a huge wrestling fan of the late 90s. And at the time, I was paying the most attention to WCW. Now, while the story beats started to get a little bit silly at the time, I was still excited to get my hands on Revenge. So about a month after the game released in North America, I finally got my chance to play the game for the first time as I nabbed a copy from a rental store. While I had played World Tour with friends, it was actually really great to be able to play this newest grappler on my own terms. Well, I mean, until I had to take it back to the rental store. And, like I mentioned just previously here too, I did manage to luck out and find this game under the Christmas tree in 1998. Just like all of the other Aki-developed wrestling games, the patented grapple system makes a return here in Revenge. So obviously, if you don't know, by pressing A, you can initiate a grapple. And from there, you can either press A or B in conjunction with a direction on the control pad to perform a variety of moves. Now, B on its own dishes out striking moves, and of course you can still do other things like run, grab weapons from the crowd, and stuff like that. Now, by holding A, you can initiate a strong grapple for even more devastating moves to dole out to your opponents. Now, holding B here too also basically deals out more powerful striking moves. Now, I think it's interesting to note that a few other additions have been added here into Revenge that weren't found in World Tour. Things like instant replays, being able to slide in the ring while running, taller wrestlers stepping over the top rope, the ability to bring weapons into the ring, and this new combo strike system. All this stuff brings new, more realistic elements into the game. Now, just to touch on this combo system. So this is a move set that is limited to a few wrestlers in the game and can be done via the strong grapple. Now, I thought it was kind of neat to see these back in the day, honestly, but critics then and now kind of pan this addition as taking away potential moves from the wrestlers. Now, keep in mind that if a wrestler has this in their moveset, it does take away some moves that they would have. Honestly, it really doesn't bother me that much now, and it really didn't bother me that much back in the day either, but I guess it is what it is. Now, getting back into the moves in the game, the special moves also make a return here, and they do see a bit of an improvement. Now, if you manage to get your special move, which you can do by basically, kind of performing well in the match, and then your spirit gauge is going to be flashing, you hit the joystick, and then boom, you have the ability to do your special move. So basically, to do that, you have to do a strong grapple and then hit and then use the joystick. Or alternatively, press A and B to steal your opponents, which is pretty cool. Now, I think the moves here in Revenge are more accurately portrayed than with the previous game. You'll see guys like Booker T slam his foot on fools' heads. Jericho's going to slam his opponent down and then work into the walls of Jericho. Goldberg's going to crush people with his jackhammer. Kevin Nash is going to have a more appropriate power bomb and more. I mean, everything about the controls and everything about these special moves and stuff, they all look great, and I think they really kind of bring a little bit more realism to the game than what was found in World Tour. Now, I did talk about some of the additions that were into the game, like the instant replays, sliding into the ring, and all this stuff. But some of the additions that are found in Revenge were actually added into the Japanese tweaked version of WCW vs. nWo World Tour, which was called Virtual Pro Wrestling 64. Now, things that made it into that game and kind of leaked over into this one are like the on-screen 2D referee that you can take out if you want to, the ability to edit costumes, more on that a little bit later, and the scoring system after the matches. These were all found in this Japanese sequel or rehash of World Tour. Now, if you want to watch or read more about that, be sure to check out our review of Virtual Pro Wrestling. I'm going to have that linked up in the description box below. Moving on to modes here, Revenge definitely has a few modes to go through. You have Championship, Exhibition, Special Match, and of course you have a costume change, and then options. Now I think Exhibition is pretty self-explanatory here, but Special Match, this allows players to try out either a handicap match or to enter into a Battle Royal mode. I'm honestly not a huge fan of the handicap match, which is a 2-on-1 type of a thing, but the Battle Royal is actually pretty fun. Now in this match type, a total of up to 40 wrestlers can participate, and by default, a ring out means you lose. Now I've always liked this in real wrestling and in games, and here I think it's pretty enjoyable. I mean, sure, there are some cheap ways that, cheap strategies and stuff that you can do to make sure that you win, but having the max 4 wrestlers in the ring at the time, and then every man for himself kind of scenario, it's pretty fun. Now, moving on to the costume change, like I said, a carryover from Virtual Pro Wrestling 64. It's obviously not quite a creator wrestler option type of thing here, but you are able to change the outfits and color schemes of the included wrestlers in the game. It's a cool option to have, but it's a little bit on the limited side. So, I don't know. I mean, I had some fun with this, I think, back in the day, but these days I really don't do much with it. Maybe just kind of change around a couple of different costumes, but nothing really significant. Of course, playing 4-player matches with friends is where it's at with any of these AccuDevelop games. I think this really adds replay value above anything else that's on offer here, and will keep you coming back for hours and hours and hours. Now, one of the biggest draws to Revenge for single-player stuff has got to be Championship mode. Now, this is where most people are going to be spending their time. Now, players can choose between the US Heavyweight, Cruiserweight, Tag Team, World Heavyweight, or TV titles to go through. Basically, it puts you through a gauntlet of wrestlers on your way to claim the belt. Now, if you're playing on a new copy of the game, you'll need to clear these belts to unlock hidden wrestlers. And I know it's not quite a career mode here, but in my opinion, this was definitely an improvement from World Tour. The inclusion of these real belts goes a long way to bring the game closer to the real life wrestling. I mean, sure, it's not the same, but it is a step up. I really like how you can actually see the championship belts around the wrestlers when they're coming to the ring in that final match, and then you can see yourself, or well, your character wearing them after you clear the titles. I mean, at the time, there was really nothing else quite like it. Visuals in Revenge are definitely a step up from World Tour. The wrestlers' faces are more lifelike and a lot clearer than what they were before. The newly added venues, with more focus on actual events like, Monday Nitro, Halloween Havoc, and more, these are all awesome and make the experience feel more real. Complete ring entrances, from the top of the ramp all the way back down to the ring, are here as well. Now, of course, this has no bearing on the gameplay whatsoever, I know that, but I think this is a super important feature to have in wrestling games. Now, for WCW and the WWF, part of the spectacle of wrestling is the entrance of your favorite grappler or that asshole that you want to see go down. While it's not perfect here, things like this go a long way to help capture the feeling of the time period and just professional wrestling in general. Now, Revenge isn't without flaws, especially when it comes to visuals. The character models do suffer from clipping pretty consistently, with arms and legs going through other wrestlers, the ropes, and more. Now, before I get to my next point, I want to start up by saying that I absolutely do love the fact that these ring entrances are here. I think I've made that clear. But whether it's intentional or it's just a glitch, ring entrances seem a little bit sluggish here. It kind of seems like it might be some kind of a stylistic thing, but it seems to be more pronounced when you actually have multiple wrestlers making their way down the aisle, because it seems like there's a little bit of slowdown here. I mean, thankfully these flaws don't take away from the actual gameplay, but it's something that you're going to notice. Now, sound here is also a bit lacking in Revenge. Now, while I think that the general action, music and stuff that's going on during the matches, the crowd reactions, and even the occasional one-liner from popular wrestlers, thank you, Macho Man, all sound just fine. But not having any theme songs for the wrestlers was a little bit disappointing both then and now. Of course, there were definitely some technical limitations on the N64, and Ackie would later go on to add this into their games onto the platform. Still, it always just leaves me just thinking and just wondering how much more complete this game would have felt with, the actual theme songs and stuff like that. But hey, it is what it is, and I think we still have a pretty solid game here. WCW vs. nWo Revenge built onto the success that World Tour brought and really kicked things up a notch. While the first title in the series was missing some aspects that make American professional wrestling what it is, ring entrances, proper moves, etc., etc., the developers worked hard to make this game as close to the real thing as they could. That's good for us because they succeeded in a huge way. Now, while later games in the series would go on to take things further, you can't ignore what Revenge did for the series. WCW vs. nWo Revenge is absolutely, as if there was any doubt, the best WCW game ever created. And that turns things over to you guys. Who's your favorite wrestler to use in the game? Do you have a cool story about how you got revenge back in the day? Be sure to sound off in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. As always, thanks for checking out this video. If you like what you see, please feel free to give this video a like. If you're new to the channel, please be sure to subscribe. We've got tons of podcasts, video reviews, special videos, retro content like this, and a whole lot more. Again, this is Danny from the Famicast. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you later.